Okay. Can you see my screen now? Yes. Okay, we managed. So good morning. Good morning, everybody. Today we will talk about, we will start talking actually about cybersecurity. And there is a quite hot topic for the moment, and it will be the hot topic for I think for the next years. So now we experienced say a real virus in the last 2 years. Probably it is likely that the next crisis will be generated from let's say a cyber attack on, let's say, a large scale, a really large scale. So in this case, the net, the internet, is the mean for allow cyber terrorists or cyber criminals to attack from anywhere. So the challenge is global. The only way for avoiding cyber threats, I would say, is to not being connected. So disconnect your computer, your smartphone, to unplug the cable that is behind your. This is the only way. Okay, but of course, in the, let's say, cost-benefit analysis, we know that this is not feasible. So there are, of course, so many ways for, say, producing damages through the net. Okay, and for example, one threat could be the sort of identity theft. So someone that is capable to use your own identity and enter in services and use services that actually belong from you. Okay. And in some cases, this can allow also what we call the identity theft, the monetary theft. Someone use your credentials, your identity, for entering in your bank accounts and stole your money. And this kind of theft are really frequent with several strategies. Of course, it can happen that if a number of credentials is stolen from a database, the thieves can enter in in the accounts and stole €1 from each account. But they have 1 million accounts available, so they got 1 million. Okay, and nobody. It is unlikely that someone will realize this. Otherwise, there are, say, more complex way of storing money. For example, simulating the identity has to be another person that has the right to receive a big payment. And this is actually something that happened. Happened a couple of years ago here in Italy, to a big company. The subsidiary of this company in India was expecting a big payment, millions of euros, and the chief financial officer of the Italian holding received the request for the payment with a specific account number. But actually, the account number was not the account number of the subsidiary. The subsidiary was in India. It was another account number managed by a person that was not the responsible of the subsidiary, but was telling to be this person. So they made the payment, and in a few hours, just the time for realizing that something went wrong, the money disappeared with other transfer, and they didn't recover them. So there are so many ways for doing this kind of, call it as you want, theft, frauds, or whatever. Also because it's very difficult, like in the last example that I made, to when the fraud exit from the jurisdiction, the country jurisdiction, European jurisdiction, it's very difficult then to follow the path of the money and identify. It becomes really difficult. Even this can happen in, let's say, countries that are not so aligned in terms of reinforcement of this kind of threats. So here it's a matter we will see afterwards, both of security that refers more to the defense of the cyber infrastructure, and also is a matter of the code, yes. And also it's a matter of safety. So the way how we, as individuals or organization, we behave in order to prevent this kind of problems. Okay. The code. '27. 840-145. Okay. So according to some studies, there are, let's say, many vectors, of course, of cyber threats and vulnerabilities. First of all, these are the web browsers. Okay. Then we have, let's say, the clients that are connected, our clients, the clients that are connected to the internet. Okay, so the app, say, all the web applications, so everything that is open to the internet, and this is more a matter of security. When we talk about behavior rules, here we talk about safety, and in this case, the way how we manage and we deal with user rights. How many times we give our own passwords to someone else that, of course, we trust in. But actually, this is something that we should not do. Not because the person is unreliable, the other person, but just because the other person can lose the information, can involuntarily spread this kind of information. So in any case, when we do this kind of actions, we increase the degree of risk. This is what I was just saying. The difference in English, in Italian, the translation is always with the same word, sicurezza. Okay, in English, security and safety have two different meanings. Okay, so security is more connected to the, let's say, physical perspective. So the accessibility, both in terms of hardware and software, to the computers. So the accessibility, the security of our homes. We'll make an example. Safety is about the way how we behave, and we respect the rules, and we put in place all the measures for avoiding risk and threats. A car on the street can be secure because a car has airbags, ABS, and so on. But the streets and the driving is safe if we behave correctly. Okay. So also companies, as users, as single users, especially companies, have to be aware from where the risk can come from. also in relation to the specific activities that they do, the specific businesses that they do. And it's important to, let's say, the so-called user awareness. Okay. Which are the cyber criminals? Very at large. The crackers that are not really criminals, but originally the name hacker was not intended in a bad sense. Hacker were the, let's say, the nerds that were capable in the past times, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, to use the computers basically to discover everything from computers. Then, and in this sense, this word has been reused for identifying people that are really capable to discover the way how to enter in computing systems and the creators are, let's say, programmers, very proficient programmers that are capable to create software that enters in systems and are capable to, for example, to decrypt passwords or making attacks on password that can be made, as we will see later on, in so many manners. Then we have the, let's say, the script kiddies that are unsophisticated users that basically use programs that are made by someone else. And somehow these are the most dangerous because they don't know exactly what they are doing. Okay. And then there are the real criminals that create and sell, for example, bots for generating spam, catching credit card numbers, and so on. These are actually professionals. In terms of threats, we have a number of typologies: viruses, worms, Trojan horses, touch anything. Okay. So, okay. A strategy that is called social engineering, that is very dangerous, especially now that we use, let's say, social networks and so on. Rootkits, botnets, and zombies. These are somehow strange names, or so we know quite well the way how viruses are working, basically like a biological virus, they are created for replicating themselves and being transmitted. So they enter in through a program or a program file, or for example, an email attachment. They can stay latent for some hours or days, just the time needed for replicating themselves, for example, through emails or through the use of downloads. And then they are executed on the infected device, and the execution does something that could be the encryption of some data, the crash, the loss of some data, the overload of the computer system. It depends of the kind of virus that is working. So the golden rules are, of course, avoiding unreliable websites or emails, especially emails with strange attachments. Now we are quite lucky because the sum of anti-spam filters, antivirus programs works quite well, and we don't have to take care about hundreds of spam messages, many of these with virus that we receive every day. Okay. Of course, it's important to use and maintain a good antivirus software that is always updated, because of course the important is to update, like the vaccination. You have to update the antivirus software, and you have to be always in the position to be capable to restore quickly your system, so having backups and so on. It may happen that you may need to restore the whole operating system. One kind of viruses are the worms, that are programs that replicate themselves and send copies from computer to computer across the network connection. Once the worm arrives, it may be activated for replicating. Logic bomb and Trojan horses. We have a video. I hope to be able to show you the video.
Viruses, worms, Trojans, and bots are all part of a class of software called malware. The overwhelming majority of malware is created to make money illegally, often by stealing sensitive and confidential information from victims' computers and mobile devices. Malware can also be used for cyber vandalism, cyber espionage, hacktivism, cyber warfare, and various other reasons. Malware can make entry onto your computer via questionable file downloads, visiting infected websites, or through email containing a seemingly benign link or attachment. Common types of malware. Viruses. Almost all viruses are attached to an executable file, which means the virus may exist on a system but will not spread until a user opens the infected program. Viruses often originate on the internet and spread when downloading a file infected with a virus, peer-to-peer file sharing, or email attachment. Trojan. A Trojan is a harmful piece of software that looks legitimate. Users are typically tricked into leading and executing it on their systems. Trojans can not only steal your sensitive data, they can also give cyber crooks access to your system. Trojans are employed to gain access to your computer's financial and personal information. Ransomware. Ransomware holds your PC hostage and demands money. It locks up your computer, threatening to destroy data, demanding ransom or a payment for release of your data, files, or to regain the ability to use your computer again. Spyware. Spyware secretly gathers private information about the user activity, such as internet usage, and logs keystrokes via the process of keylogging to steal passwords and other sensitive data. Worms. Worms can replicate themselves and infect multiple computers on a network, causing major damage. Network worms often use computer networks to spread, slowing down traffic and relying on security failures such as outdated operating systems and no antivirus programs installed. In contrast, viruses require the spreading of an infected host file. Worms are a standalone software and do not require a host or human help to spread. The best way to protect your system from malware is to keep your operating system clean by downloading regular patches, updates, and making sure that your computer is protected by the latest antivirus software from a trusted vendor.
Okay. So, social engineering is another, let's say, more advanced somehow way of finding the information about the person. Social engineering is do you remember the video that I show you at the beginning of the course about the wizard that was reading the mind of the people, no? And this actually, but at the end of the video, we discovered that behind the wall there was a number of hackers that were searching information over the web, over the social networks regarding the person, and the wizard was connected with the earphones. So this is the same. No? Social engineering is finding the information that refers to a person, such as, for example, the name of the children, the wife, the date of birth, that are usually the information that we use for passwords and usernames. Okay, and here another video. It works. It doesn't. It doesn't work. The link, but we copy. Chief Hacking Officer.
So I run a pen testing company because it's so much fun. You know, I started hacking back in the 1970s for the challenge, the seduction of adventure, and the pursuit of knowledge. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about, causing any sort of harm. I just loved solving the puzzle. I had this real passion for learning about technology, phones, pulling pranks, and this sort of thing. So after getting myself into a lot of trouble and years passing, the industry changed. The ARPANET became the internet, and now companies had a need for security testing. So naturally, I fell into this field of doing ethical hacking. And what a greater thing. It's almost like Pablo Escobar becoming a pharmacist. So I really run a pen testing company. It's really not about the money for me. It's more about the challenge, kind of, how I started out in this field in providing a great service to my clients of hopefully that my team is going to find all the security vulnerabilities that that company has so the bad guys can't break in. What's my favorite pen test? Well, I have so many because I do pen testing all the time. It's like my second love. And most recently, I did a pen test on a client. And what was unique about this pen test, it was the first time where I was able to exfiltrate their information, not by getting onto their computer systems and copying the information over the internet to some server in the cloud. I was actually able to steal their cloud. So clone their database servers, clone their Amazon instances in this particular case. So that was pretty eye-opening for me because in this particular case, the activity went undetected because people have security software that run on their servers. They're security sensors that run on their network. But what about if you just steal their cloud and they just don't see it because it's invisible? Are there hacks that people have forgotten about? Absolutely. It's not that people have forgotten about it. I think it's more that people just simply don't know about it. Recently, I did 2 videos for KnowBe4, and what these videos were was demonstrating a hack called Ransom Cloud. And Ransom Cloud was created by a friend of mine, Chemo Alonso, with Telefonica back 2 years ago. But the average public had no idea it existed. So Ransom Cloud was demonstrating how ransomware was actually going to move to the cloud and going to affect things like your cloud-based email. So in this particular demonstration, I show how a hacker could do a phishing attack, gain control of your Outlook 365 account, and encrypt your email. And unless you pay the bad guy the ransom, you don't get your email back. Another cool demonstration that I showed recently, and this has been known in the security community for quite some time, is how to get around two-factor authentication by fooling the user. Because a lot of people think that two-factor authentication is the silver bullet to stop phishing attacks, when it really isn't, because I could still fool you, and even if you have two-factor authentication, get access to your account. How come you have a 100% success rate in pen tests when you're allowed to use social engineering? It's true. When I am allowed to use social engineering in scope of a pen test, our success rate since 2004, that's when I started this company, we've always gotten in. And that's because we could always find at least one person inside the company that's going to comply with our request. So unfortunately, we're not alone. So the criminals that use this type of social engineering tradecraft are also extremely successful in breaking into businesses and deploying ransomware. So that's why it's so important to take this attack vector of social engineering extremely serious and do something about it. Why are the users the weakest link? Because we still can't download a patch for stupidity from Microsoft. No, just kidding. All right, I'll answer that better. Why are the users the weakest link? Because they simply don't know. They're not expecting to be the victim of an attack. They might not know the types of scams that the bad guys use. Might not be familiar with security at all. They're familiar with whatever their daily job is. So it's really not being educated about social engineering tradecraft or how it works. What do I see for the next 5 years related to social engineering? Well, I don't see social engineering going away anytime soon. I think the bad guys are actually going to get better at this type of tradecraft. And what I mean by better is actually using machine learning or even artificial intelligence to pull off attacks in a more of an automated fashion so they could actually attack more victims, deploy more ransomware, deploy crypto mining software on victims' computers, and do all these nasty things. So I see that the bad guys are going to get better at doing these types of attacks using social engineering. So that's the reason we got to become better than them to detect them and to actually stop them in their tracks. So what's my vision for the KnowBe4 platform? My vision is to become the greatest platform to help our clients mitigate the risk of social engineering. And that involves our future projects with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and really helping our clients get the content they need, especially when it involves security awareness training, helping our clients have the best simulated attacks so they can inoculate their people, and using the best of breed technologies to help our clients do that and have great support. So I want KnowBe4 to be the #1 go-to company to help businesses protect themselves against the threat of social engineering.
Okay.
So there you go. Thank you for listening to my AMA. So I'm Kevin Mitnick, KnowBe4's Chief Hacking Officer, and all of you stay safe.
So as you see here, this is one of the, say, new jobs, quite new jobs. So people that works on try to anticipate the threats, to identify which can be the dangers that may arise from new technologies, doing simulations in order to understand if a system, specific system, is safe and secure. Of course, you know about the phishing emails. We receive a lot of these emails that in some case look also quite reliable, but of course you have always to go in depth. First of all, looking at the real email address that is behind the nickname that appears. Okay, and this is the first check you can make, of course. Then if this email comes from, let's say, your bank, or it's supposed to be your bank, before opening, and you should call the bank and asking if they did send something like this, for example. So in principle, never provide passwords to a link that should look also like your bank one, but actually is just a matter for grabbing password. Yes.
For example, if there are text messages that are sent, like your packages didn't arrive, click on this link. Is this also from phishing?
Could be.
Or only the emails?
Could be. Could be. Could be.
Because
could be because they use these links for example, catching your Amazon credentials, and in Amazon usually you have also the payment methods stored, and so they go there and they store the payment methods, for example. So never, unless you are really waiting for something. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is an example of counterfeit web pages that looks like the web pages of your bank or your, but actually they don't. Botnet, a botkit. So a botnet is a number of compromised computers that are used and for creating and sending spam or viruses. Okay, so a net, a bot. And in order also to overwhelm the computing systems of workload, in order to make them to give a denial of service. Cyber criminals are getting more and more, let's say, clever. The computers that are compromised from this kind of attacks are called zombies. Okay.
For as long as cyber criminals have been cooking up malicious software to do stuff like steal your precious data, the security industry has been thinking up creative names for their little schemes. Trojans, worms, ransomware, you get the idea. But one of the most sinister forms of malware prevalent today is the dreaded rootkit. And although to the layman this sounds like some kind of dental procedure, an actual rootkit on your PC can be far more unpleasant. But then what exactly are they, and why can they be even more problematic than other types of computer infections? Great question. Like with a lot of the other threats to your system, the name rootkit reveals a lot. It's derived from the concept of root access in the operating system Unix, which allows a user broad permissions to change files and settings. And while the means by which different rootkits access to usually off-limits parts of the computer differ, all rootkits serve the same general function: to conceal either their own presence or the presence of another piece of malware, so that it can carry out its nefarious deeds on your system without you ever knowing. And it's because of this concealing behavior that rootkits are often very difficult to remove, as many users in the mid-2000s found out when they realized Sony had shipped a metric butt-ton of music CDs with rootkits designed for, you guessed it, copy protection. These rootkits hid the DRM software, which limited what users could do with their optical drives, and also caused serious system slowdowns and introduced a ton of security flaws that other malware creators were able to take advantage of. And then when Sony finally released a removal tool after news of the rootkit went viral, all it did was cause even more issues. So how do rootkits hide themselves anyway? While some rootkits just inject themselves into your programs, somewhat like traditional computer viruses, the more dangerous forms run as part of your operating system's kernel. No, not the chicken guy, but the core part of your OS that allows your programs to communicate with your hardware through things like device drivers. Since drivers usually run in kernel mode, many rootkits disguise themselves as drivers, which is why you should only download drivers from trusted sources like the manufacturer's website, no matter how badly you want to get your fancy new graphics card working. What makes kernel mode rootkits so insidious is that they essentially appear to be a part of the OS itself, meaning you can't really trust your antivirus program to detect it. or anything else your system says about itself for that matter. And as if that weren't bad enough, other kinds of rootkits even go beyond infecting your OS kernel by doing things like contaminating your hard drive's boot sector, often done to break encryption, or getting into your system's firmware, such as your motherboard or GPU BIOS. If that happens, not even completely reformatting your PC will help. Well, Linus, that all sounds pretty darn awful. If I don't even know I have a rootkit, how can I get rid of them? That, admittedly, is a challenge. Larger organizations have tried strategies like logging suspicious access requests through a firewall or dumping everything in a system's memory to look for malicious code, but these aren't the kinds of things a home user can easily do. Modern motherboards with UEFI BIOSes have some features to block rootkits, such as secure boot, but this solution has been criticized for keeping a user from doing legitimate things like installing multiple operating systems. So while some simpler rootkits can be detected and removed by your favorite anti-malware program, the best counter strategy is to just be super careful about what you download. Speaking of things to be downloaded, why don't you download some knowledge to your brain? Little Bits lets everyone use electronics as modular building blocks. Their modules snap together with magnets so you can create circuits in seconds. It's perfect for kids, parents, big kids, coders, hardware hackers, makers, artists, designers, engineers, and students. And with Little Bits, you can even get your dog to send text messages or make a robotic snack server. So why buy electronic toys and gadgets when you can literally invent them? The modules range from very simple, power sensors, LEDs, to very complex with wireless and programmable modules. And there's over 60 modules that can be used in a vast number of creative combinations. And better yet, Little Bits is offering new customers $20 off their first kit and free shipping anywhere in the continental US. All you got to do is go to littlebits.com/techquickie. That's littlebits.com/techquickie. I don't know why that's in there twice. And go ahead and get $20 off. Woo! After you make something, actually send me an Instagram, or better yet, tag me on Twitter, because I'm more likely to check that. I would love to see it. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, do that thing. If you disliked it, do the other thing.
Okay. So this is what just explained. So how rootkit are working, and that are programs that are capable to modify the operating system, and are also capable to eliminate the evidence that of the attack. And so it's quite interesting to understand, also in order to be capable to prevent this. Another kind of attack is the attack made by the man in the middle. A subject that position herself over the net is a subject that is listening to the traffic that is flowing on the network. It's not on the computer, it's not of the victim, it's not on the server, it's in the middle, exactly. And let's say, stole the relevant information that flows over the net. And I have another video here.
Scenario here is, this victim. Let's go ahead and get these kind of beside each other. The scenario is this victim here is actually just, walked in Starbucks and gotten on the Starbucks Wi-Fi. And there's also an attacker, who's this person, that's on the same Wi-Fi in Starbucks, okay? So as you can see, this victim's IP is 188. Now keep in mind, as the attacker, you wouldn't have to know this, because what I would do, I'm going to do an ARP poisoning attack. And in real life, what I might do is just ARP poison everyone on the Starbucks Wi-Fi to ensure that I get the right person. But in this case, to speed it up, I'm going to go ahead and just attack this particular IP address. But the way it would work is I would simply first, via ARP, and in the class, we actually go into explanations of how ARP work, how the protocol works and those types of things so that you understand what what we're actually exploiting. But here, I'm just going to demonstrate it. So first thing is I need to set up ARP spoof because I need to tell the victim, which is, I believe it's 188.
This is an IP address. See?
That I'm the gateway, which is .2. New keyboard here. And then simultaneously, I will need to tell the gateway that I'm the victim. So I'll need to have both these running at the same time. All right, so, telling one lie in one direction, telling it in the opposite direction. In order for this to work, I will also need to turn on something called IP forwarding, which basically makes my man-in-the-middle machine here act like a router. Now, to show you this work, we're going to just ping the gateway from here. And ping is just a way to reach out and touch it. And we're going to do that continuously, all right? And while that's going on, I want to also show you that in this machine's ARP cache, because I want you to actually see the poison happen, we can see that .2 is at this MAC address. And that's going to be part of the poison. We're going to, actually write over that with some bogus information. So the first thing you'll see happen is as I start the poison, let me make sure my forwarding is not on yet. All right, so it's not on. I'm purposely not going to turn it on until after. So I'll start the poison. And what you're going to see is the pings will cease to be successful, right? You see the pings are timing out now. That's because I poisoned this machine, and it thinks that .2 is at my MAC address on my machine and not the actual gateway router, which would be like the Starbucks router. So if we look at the ARP cache now as compared to what it was before, we can clearly see that the MAC address associated with the gateway, which is .2, has changed now. And another telltale sign is the fact that it's a duplicate entry. You can see that it shows two same MAC addresses with two different IPs. All right, that's the evidence of the poison happening. So now this machine literally thinks I'm the gateway, which means anytime he tries to go out to the internet, it comes to my interface first, and then it's my job as a man in the middle to forward that on. Again, we're still on Starbucks Wi-Fi here. So I'm going to turn on IP forwarding just by making.
Do you understand what he did? Basically, he diverted the traffic of a computer, the victim computer, to a server, any server that is on the net, through his computer. So every request to another server that comes from the victim computer has to pass through his computer. This is the first step. That is done through a public network, such as the Starbucks, in this case, Wi-Fi system.
Taking this file, which has a value of 0, make it a 1. Usually in class, what I do is I'll quiz students and say, okay, if 0 is what's making it not forward, what do you think I need to change it to make it forward? And I give them a chance to answer that. But by writing a 1 into that file, now you can see it's got a 1 value. It turned on forwarding, and now you can see the pings are back successful. So now at that point, we've actually completed the in the middle part of the attack, which means now all this victim's traffic to and from the internet at Starbucks is coming through my interface, so I can see all their traffic. And here's where it gets interesting. Now that I've got the man in the middle going, that means I'm going to see any DNS query. When you type, for example, infosecinstitute.com into your web browser, what happens is your computer sends a query to whatever your DNS server is and says, where is InfoSec Institute? And your DNS server will respond and say, InfoSec Institute is at this IP address. All right, and we break down DNS and go into it to show you how that works. But what I'm going to do now is called DNS poisoning on top of the ARP poisoning. So I'm going to look for any queries for Facebook, and then I'm going to respond on behalf of the real DNS server out there, because remember, I'm in the middle, and lie to the victim and tell it Facebook is at this IP address, which is 141, which is mine. And to do that, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to create a host file here named Camille. I'm going to say that Facebook, because we're framing you for all the hacks today, Camille. So you're going to.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to say that Facebook is at 141. And in case they're smart enough to do a reverse lookup, we're going to say that 141 is also Facebook. Now this is, again, on the local Wi-Fi. So while I'm setting this up, one of the first questions I usually get is, what about VPNs? Well, actually, I want you to connect to VPN, because remember, before you connect to VPN, you generally have to still connect to the Wi-Fi and get that little proxy page. So in reality here, I would probably be man in the middling and pretending to be that little Google Starbucks or whatever it is you click on to accept Starbucks' Wi-Fi. And that is when I would have you. Now, in this particular instance, I'm going to run the DNS spoof tool and point it at my Camille file, okay? My MacBook is sensitive.
Using a virtual
My
machine.
iMac is sensitive about sniffing, so I have to get permission to do it. So now that we've got this set up, watch what happens when the victim tries to ping Facebook. Look at where it thinks Facebook is. So now, again, we're still on Starbucks, and at this point, this person, if they were to try to go to Facebook, they'd end up at my version of it, or end up at my machine. Now, currently, I don't have a web server set up that's got a fake copy of Facebook. So let me show you how in like 30 seconds we can set that up. Fortunately, there's a tool written by Dave Kennedy, who founded this company called Binary Defense, I believe it is. Sorry, Dave. Just Dave Kennedy is the guy. Called Social Engineers Toolkit. All right, and what it does is it automates the process of setting this up, setting up the fake website. Okay, so all I need to do is tell it, hey, I'm going to do 1 for social engineering, 2 for website attack vectors, 2 for browser exploit method, 2 for site cloner, say no to natting, reverse connection, I want to come to my IP, which is 141. And then who do I want to clone? That's going to be Facebook. All right, and it says which browser exploit do you want to use? I don't know which browser the victim might have, so I'm going to go with 35, which is Autopon. What that does is it will create a version of the browser exploit for every possible browser and OS combination. So whatever you got, it's going to have a potential exploit for it. And keep in mind, there are 0 days as well. So even if you've somehow made sure you patched, you're only patching against the ones that the vendor knows about. So we're going to now pick 2 here because I want an interpreter session. If I'm able to successfully exploit the victim, I'm going to let the port stay 443 because my interpreter is encrypted. So when it comes outbound to me, I want it to look normal. In other words, If I had encrypted traffic coming out via port 80, that wouldn't look normal. But encrypted traffic coming out of a 443 is normal. So I'm going to leave the outbound port that they're going to connect to me on to set the 443. All right. So it's going in and it's setting up the database. It's building and loading all the exploits in memory here. And this is where it's doing the part that I said where it's going to configure a version of the exploits for every potential browser OS combination. And it's doing Flash exploits, QuickTime exploits, JavaScript, Java exploits, ActiveX exploits, Microsoft browsers, C object handling exploits, every type of browser exploit you can imagine. It's loading a version of those so that when your machine or when the victim's browser hits it, it will look at what your browser is in the GET request and send the appropriate exploits based on that. So now that it's set, let's go ahead and pretend to be the victim. We're going to just open our browser here. Of course, there's all kind of politics on there. And we're just going to go right to Facebook because there's nothing to help us defeat politics more than going to Facebook and getting more politics, right?
Some good information there.
Exactly. So what you find is, as a result of this victim just literally trying to go to Facebook, now we could make this slicker and redirect them to the real Facebook after they take our bait, but just loading this page, that's it. We're already on the box. So as a result of that, it found a vulnerability in a browser, exploited it, gave us control of that machine. So now, if I connect to that session that was created, which is session 1 right here, I own that machine. We can take screenshots, see what they see on their screen. We can also, if we wanted to get like their credentials or something, I could do keylog recorder. Right, and what that does is as the victim would type things, right? So let's go back and play victim once more. So if the victim were to log into Facebook, log into somewhere else, or even, log into their Chase account. And I'm not picking on Chase here. This is bank agnostic. Like there's not specific to any one bank here. So if I logged into my bank account, by going to that, finding the login button wherever it may be. All right, it's taking a minute to load because the browser's not happy about what we just did to it. But let's just type some other stuff. So let's pretend Camille is typing a email to Jeff. Jeff, I think Keytron hacked me and framed you for it. Can you check your logs? Camille, all right? So we send that email or whatever the case may be. If we, I didn't take the time to actually load an email client here, but I think this serves a purpose. So we pretend like we send that email. We go back over to the play attacker again. We stop the keylog recording. It says, hey, I saved all keystrokes from that machine to this text file. Well, guess what? If we go now and read that text file on our hacker machine, what we see is the keystrokes that Camille entered on that machine. There's the browse to Chase. There's a message she typed up. I think Keytron framed me for it, blah, blah, blah. So whatever she types is going to show up in this text file. And that's just scratching the surface. So this is literally one of the classic labs that I walk students through in, I think, day 3 of the ethical hacking course. This is a lab that I'll walk them through, teach them how to do this, make them do it a few times so that they're sure that they got the steps down. And then we dive into the, the technology and why it works and that type of thing. So that's why you don't ever use public Wi-Fi. You always use Wi-Fi or use internet that you control. If you're traveling or something like that, you want to just use your phone, tether your phone to your laptop or something of that nature, because using public Wi-Fi, this could very easily happen to you. And again, VPNs don't help you. VPNs only give you confidentiality. VPNs don't stop you from getting exploited if you hit a malicious site that's got like browser 0 days in it. So the solution here is simple. Don't use public Wi-Fi if you have an option. And if you're an important enough employee to be using VPNs that frequently, then you should be able to get approval for them to pay for broadband or something for you on your mobile device. And you can even get it inside your mobile device as well. But that's kind of how you would mitigate that. There's other things that would keep this from happening on your corporate network. But remember, attackers don't stop attacking you when you go to get off your corporate network. When you go to these public places, that's where you're more vulnerable.
Okay. So you see that in 10 minutes, it was able to enter in and intercept the traffic of the victim laptop using a public Wi-Fi. So be careful when you are connected to public Wi-Fi, especially the ones that don't have passwords or have one password valid for anyone. Because here, for example, you connect to the Wi-Fi, that is public Wi-Fi, but of course you use your own password. So if you do something wrong, like the man in the middle, someone is capable to know. In that case, not. But it's more difficult. This is the way how passwords can be cracked or attacked, making a dictionary attack or a brute force attack. Okay, with social engineering and knowing the personal info, an attack can take manually from 2 to 5 minutes. From an expert hacker. Okay. Then you can have attacks that are made by calculation, just putting together alphanumeric characters, simulating the password. Of course, oh, sorry, I forget the dictionary attack. Okay, that is always done by with automation, of course. Otherwise, the combination of characters can make a few seconds if characters are 4 or 8 with lower cases. Okay, or can take minutes, but 8 characters are not enough. But you stick from 8, if you stick from 8 characters to 12 characters, the number of calculations needed will take years instead of minutes. So the rule is, the more the password is long, the safer it is. Okay. I don't know why sometimes disappears. And so I have another video, maybe. Come on. Okay, of course I did.
Hello, this is Sunny. Welcome back. Today my topic is dictionary attack and brute force attack. In any major business database, such as Google, Amazon, or eBay, all users' passwords should be stored in a form of a digest. They should never be stored in plain text. However, hackers and cyber criminals can still be able to steal these files and hack our passwords. They use many methods and strategies. Today, I'd like to talk about two types of this attack: dictionary attack and a brute force attack. A dictionary attack is a simple and fast password attack. By dictionary, I mean any digital resources that have words, like Wikipedia. This is how it works. Step 1. From a dictionary, hackers generate thousands of candidate digests. They create a huge lookup table with these candidate digests and their pre-matched plain text passwords. Step 2. Hackers compare these candidate digests to those in a stolen digest file. If there's a match, they get the password. Although such approach would seem impractical to do manually, computers can do this very fast and run through millions of words in a few hours. Brute force attack is when the hackers use their computers to systematically cycle through each letter in a character set. A character set can be letters, symbols, numbers, or anything the hackers want. In the most simple terms, brute force attack is a trial and error method which attempts all the combinations for a password. This method is quite efficient for short passwords, but cracking all possible passwords is only a matter of time. As I mentioned before, hackers and cyber criminals are using many different methods and strategies to steal and hack our passwords. Dictionary attack and brute force attack, or the combination of these two methods we call hybrid attack, are just examples. They are very obnoxious, evil, greedy, but very determined. Therefore, we need to do at least 3 things to protect our passwords. Number 1, our password should be at least 12 characters long. That's the minimum, 12 characters long, with the combination of letters, numbers, and special symbols. Some letters should be in an uppercase and some letter should be the lowercase. Number 2, we should have a unique password for a different account. Never use the one same password for all accounts. Number 3, our password should be updated at least every 3 months, and never reuse our old passwords. I know it's very difficult to manage to remember all these passwords and update every 3 months. And for myself, it's almost impossible to remember all my passwords, long, complicated passwords, without writing down in a paper, which is a very bad idea. You should never do that. You might ask, is there any good solution to password management? The answer is yes. But how to manage your password, our passwords, is another story in another video. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
See the next. Okay. Which are, let's say, the symptoms of a cyber attack? In particular of a virus attack. Of course, the antivirus tell us something. The space disappears. Pop-ups, files or transaction that should not be there. The computer is slowing down. Of course, so the physical threat of a stolen computer, because a stolen computer if accessible, easily accessible or crackable, may contain the whole information of the user. Okay. The mouse pointer moves by itself. This means that someone is in your computer connected from outside, or the computer spontaneously shut down and reboots. For example, malware can change the look and feel of the browser, adding buttons, for example. Okay, or the firewall. Every computer has a software firewall. Is turned off, allowing malware to enter. Okay. So the attacks follow also the different layers that we have already seen in terms of hardware and software. Okay, the network, the hardware, the operating system, the antivirus, the security patches that you should download every periodically. You have a button on the laptop, on your PC. If you use Windows, it's on the right hand side down, where you can check for the updates of the operating system that are not only in terms of functionality, but mainly in terms of security. Of course, use an antivirus or anti-spyware, and check which is the level of protection that is set up for your firewall, for the firewall of your computer. Patches and data, both on Apple and strong passwords. Okay, we have done for today. Any question? Any question? No question.
May I ask something?
Yes, sure.
Project?
Yeah.
Um, I was not attending the first 2 weeks because I was working, so I studied a lesson about on the drive, but I don't know exactly what are the rules for the business plan.
Mhm.
And the capital, how long should be, I just saw the content, what is contained, but I don't know exactly how long it should be.
So as I always say that I don't evaluate the weight and the length of things.
So because it was not data, so.
It's important that you put there everything is needed. Okay.
There's
No, I say no less and no more. That what is needed, of course, and depends on also on the complexity of your business venture, the level of details that you want to provide. For sure, you have to present, let's say, a business plan that is somehow detailed enough, that you are capable to synthesize in a pitch.
How should it be? Like, let's say 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, the pitch is something that is usually doing in the American way is not more than 8 minutes. Okay, we can have 15, but it's something that so everything should be in the plan. Then you have to be capable to synthesize at the best in your pitch and being also really effective in terms of presentation, because you have to convince me, like you should convince an investor, for example, to put money in your business, or a bank to give you a loan. Okay.
Have a detailed video with the business plan and then a short PowerPoint with the pitch.
Exactly.
The sketch now. And I also saw the Prometheus project.
Yes.
Reading the website. Do we have to register somewhere else?
No. You just have to register on my page.
Yes.
And this will flow directly into the
So
project.
it's automatic, it's not two different
No.
registrations.
No.
Thank you.
Even though, of course, there are initiatives that are from the project that you can follow. I can keep you updated, but you just have to follow also the website, and but I will keep you updated. Yes. So the deadline, there is no deadline in principle. Of course, for this stream of, let's say, activities related also to the project, to Prometheus project, if you want to be in the circle, I would say, you have to do it now. Having it to do fixing the date for the exam in January or February at the latest. Okay. Otherwise, it really depends on your plans. When you want to graduate, and so basically you can do the exam whenever you want from now till next September, October.
Some more questions.
Yes.
Submit, let's say, one topic, and then we decide to change it to fit more the Prometheus project. Focus more on circular economy. Can we change it?
Yeah, sure. You are still in time.
Does it has to be like a new project, like a new idea, if you just do the business plan, or it can be like an analysis of or something that already exists?
You have two choices, as said. You can make, let's say, a business plan. Let's call it business plan to simplify. That is one thing. It's a business plan. So you have to think to your potential or real business venture. And that is something that is related to digital technologies, circular economy, and so on. Okay, and this is it. Or you can have the other choice to do, let's say, a more scientific work. That is basically writing a scientific paper on one of the topics. That means collecting data, of course, the same. You should need to collect data also for the business plan because you need to run a market analysis, of course. But let's say the paper is a kind of more scientific. It's like the way how you can do you can prepare your dissertation, your final dissertation. Clear? Yeah.
I'm just curious about the final exam.
You are
Curious about the final exam. How will it be the final exam?
The final exam will be in both cases that you choose for the paper or the will be the presentation, so the pitch or the presentation of the paper, and the oral exam on the course program, so on the book and the material that is available.
The main point is more necessary to do the project, and then
It's 50-50. Okay.
And the lecture notes for cloud computing are not yet of the.
Pardon?
The lecture notes for cloud computing, not yet of the platform.
Yes, it is. I put it tonight. You are not updated. Tonight at 11, I think. Something like that. Okay. See you tomorrow.